Hi everyone, Risto here. Welcome to Tips and Tricks for Making Soft Shackles. This is kind of a YouTube version of the little workshops I've been doing over the last several years for other cruising sailors. There's been some interest along the way from people wanting to learn how to tie their own soft shackles. They're available commercially, but they're pretty expensive, and they're absolutely dead simple to make. So I've been doing these little workshops and kind of hands-on. They take about an hour. I'm going to try to keep this YouTube a little shorter than that. But essentially show you how to tie the soft shackles. There's a soft shackles essentially a very, very simple device. For those of you who don't know what they are, they're a piece of 12-strand hollow braid with an eye on one end and a slip eye in one end and a very solid knot in the other end. The premise is that the knot goes through the eye, which closes down on that, and you've got a very, very secure and very, very strong substitute for a steel pin shackle. I've got these all over the boat. I've replaced almost all the steel pin shackles with soft shackles. I use them to hold everything, hold our jack lines to anchors, to hold halyards to heads of sails, to hold sheets to clews of sails, millions of uses for them. But again, the most difficult part that I find people have in learning how to tie these, and it certainly was for me, is how to tie the diamond knot. There's several knots you can use, but we typically use the diamond knot. So I'm going to go through the process of how to make the shackle, but first off I want to teach you how to make the diamond knot. So let's get to it. So as I was saying, you can try to do these so they're kind of point of view so you can actually see from my perspective. Basically all you're looking at is an eye and a knot. The best by far material to make these out of, you can make it out of any 12-strand hollow braid, but generally speaking everybody uses something called Amsteel. It's a trade name for Samson's Dyneema line. Most of the line manufacturers make a Dyneema line. Some are stiffer than others. I find that Amsteel, regular old Amsteel or Amsteel 78 works very, very well. Different sizes. This is 3/16. This is the size of 3/16. I've made some very small ones out of I think this is 7/32. But this one here is the old, I call it the old style. It's actually the original style. You'll see that this one has an extra eye in it, an extra loop, whereas this one here does not. These were the original way that soft shackles were tied, and still most of the commercial ones are tied this way. If you go to the marine stores, you'll see them on the shelf. Now the crazy thing about soft shackles is you pay $27, $30 for one of these, and this one here I made for about $5, if that, and it takes about 15 minutes. Once you get it down, it's even less than that. So first off, this is, why use Amsteel? Amsteel as a material is very, very, very strong. This 3/16 Amsteel is as strong, or possibly a little stronger, than 3/16 stainless rigging wire. The advantage you have is, rigging wire you can't make eyes out of. It's actually as strong or stronger than a 3/16 pin shackle, steel shackle. If you count up on our boat, other than the anchor shackle, which of course has to be a galvanized shackle, I think I've got maybe on the entire boat maybe 3 shackles that were part of other hardware. On the furlers, there's some shackles involved, so I didn't really want to replace those with soft shackles. But virtually everything else where a steel shackle would be used, I've replaced with soft shackles. They're so nice. This one here, the original one I made, this is the first soft shackle I ever made, and it has been holding our main halyard to our mainsail at the head for almost 4 years now. I actually just replaced it this year because I thought, well, let's not take any risks with that. But it's still in very good shape, and I'll use this for something else. So at any rate, take a look at what the crux of the soft shackle really is: the knot. Learning how to tie the diamond knot. There's some resources I'll put at the end of this, two really good resources. One is a website called L-36. It's L-36.com. That's really where I've learned everything I've learned about tying soft shackles, and he's got some great stress tests and some load tests that he's done on them recently. He's worked with Brian Toss on some load testing and that, and see where these things fail. But technically, a soft shackle is twice the strength of the individual line. So if this is 3/16, I don't have my notes with me, but 3/16, I know the numbers for quarter I believe is 7,600 pound breaking strength. So basically, a 1/4-inch soft shackle should be about twice that. I wouldn't take it out and load it to that in a critical situation, but these things are super strong. So I've lifted an engine with a couple made out of 5/16 ham steel, which are super duper strong. So at any rate, the crux of this is how to tie this knot. Okay, so for illustration purposes and for teaching purposes, I've put a sample together with two different colored lines. This is actually a really good way to learn this, to keep things sorted out for you. I also put a piece of tape on here about halfway up the length. This is a piece of two lengths of 1/4-inch line, about 30 inches long. But I taped this to approximate the exit on an actual soft shackle, so that you can gauge how close your knot needs to be to the exit for the soft shackle. So I'm going to show you how to tie this two different ways. I'm going to show you how to tie it the way I typically tie it, which being right-handed. I'll also do it left-handed for you, because it works either way, but you have to make sure of a couple of things. So first off, with the standing parts coming towards you and the tails going away from you, grab one of the colors. I'm going to use blue in this case, and grab it with 2 or 3 fingers and turn this line underneath, so that you've got a line with the tail end underneath the standing part here and off to your left. The other line just goes straight up and back. You don't want it to be crossed. It just straight up and back with the tail on the inside, to the same side as the blue line. So this is just a loop up and back. Now to tie the diamond knot, you tie the beginning of a carrick bend, C-A-R-R-I-C-K, the beginning of the carrick bend, and then it turns into the diamond knot with the rest of the knot. So first off, take this loop, in this case your right hand, put it up through the loop, not down through. It's got to come up through the other loop, up through the blue loop. And then this tail, the white tail, goes over this standing part. This basically locks over, under the tail of the opposite line, and then back through this line, this eye, not from front to back, but from back to front. And pull that up snug. You're going to have some slack because of the length of this loop. So pull the slack out of that loop so it lays kind of flat like that. And then just pull this slack right back out. So you've got, if you look at this, flatten it out, get it kind of nice and even, so the blue and the white are the same length. Get this worked out for you here. You basically have a figure 8. Now the way you know you did this right is this line comes out of here, coming down towards you. This one comes out going away from you. If you have these either both coming down or both going up, you did something wrong. So you need to back up and figure out where you went wrong. Now, this is the beginning of the carrick bend. I'm not going to tie a carrick bend. You can figure that out. But what you do with this, as opposed to having it laying this direction, you want to tilt this. You want to rotate this so that it becomes kind of perpendicular to the standing parts. So now you've got, if you look at this, you've got a square hole up through the middle of this. You can see my finger in that square hole. Now, if you look at the knot, these lines are essentially coming out of here in a kind of a logical spiral. Now this is tying it this way. It's the opposite way if you tie it with your other hand, so I'm going to show you that as well, because this is key. Because what you do now is continuing the same direction. So in this direction, you take this line, this tail, and go around the next standing part, not the first standing part, but the second standing part. So you go, in this case, you go around the opposite color, not white, but you go around the blue one, and then up through that square hole in the middle. You have to open it up a little bit to get the line through there. But so around the blue standing part, so you can see it there, and up through this square hole in the middle. And then you do exactly the same thing, go in the same direction around, in this case, the white standing part, and up through that hole in the middle. So right up through that square hole. So you'll see that both of these lines come out in exactly the same place. They come out parallel to one another. Then what you want to do is, see you've got some extra slack here. You want to start working the slack out. So starting where it comes out of the standing part, just take and follow that around, chase it up tight, chase the slack out of it, and work it around till you have no place else to go but to pull the slack out through the top of the knot. And do exactly the same thing with the other side. The blue side, chase this slack out, chase it on around, chase it on around, chase it on around till again the only place left to pull the slack out is to take it out through the top of the knot. Now what you see is you've got a very loose diamond knot now. And sometimes it helps to rub this between your hands to kind of even it out and just massage it a little bit. Now, I like to take and again, work some of the slack out. You want it to be as close to this exit point as you can. The L36 website, L-36 website, says 3/4 of an inch. I've found that you can get it even closer than that, and it makes for a very tidy knot. But just kind of work this slack out of this, and I try to work most of it out using the tail ends as much as possible. But it also helps to pull this way, this direction, away from, and to tighten up the bottom of the knot. So pull the standing part out of there as well. So I'm not going to tighten this up because I need to be able to undo this. So in the next section of the video, I'll show you how to tighten this up. Okay, so some tricks for working with am steel. First off, number one, a very sharp knife. I oftentimes use a ceramic knife. I try to not steal them out of the kitchen because working with am steel really dulls the knives. But this is just a super simple knife sharpener, REI, 10 bucks. I find it's a diamond surface. It tones knives up very, very quickly. But trying to work with am steel with a dull knife will be nothing but frustrating to you because am steel is very hard to cut. So keeping your knife sharp, having a little cutting block to work with is helpful. This is just a little piece of cutting block that I pack around with me. You're going to need some fids. I tend to use a 1/4 inch fid, a 5/16, or I guess that's a 1/4 inch fid, a 5/16 fid, and I use a large one, and I'll show you why. You can use a screwdriver for this. You can use almost anything for this. In this case, it's a tightening bar. So you need some fids. You'll need some tape. Regular masking tape works. I tend to like detail tape, this trim tape. This is called, what do they call this? Fine edge or finish edge. It's got a shiny surface to it, unlike regular blue tape that's kind of got a matte surface to it. This works really well because it tends to slide through the am steel really well. So let's, a couple of things. For cutting am steel, a couple of really useful things to bear in mind is don't ever try to cut am steel and work with it without taping the ends. I've already cut these ends, but I'll show you what I mean. If you just cut the end of this, if you just cut it off square, pretty soon you're gonna have a fuzzy fuzzy bundle at the end. It's going to be really, really hard to work with. Number one, it doesn't go into fids. It's hard to get into the fids. It starts unraveling and whatnot. So one of the tricks I've found, and I don't know if I worked it out or learned it from somebody else. I probably learned it from somebody else. Take 1.5 inches, 2 inches of this tape and tape the end really tightly. That's probably a little bit much tape, but you can use electrical tape, although I find electrical tape gets sticky. Now, one of the tricks I've found with this is rather than cut this square like this, rather than cut it square, where again you've got an end that doesn't really necessarily fit in the fid real well because it doesn't, you have to really jam it in there. The little trick I've learned is if you cut this tape at a really steep angle, not super steep, but 45 or so, cut it like that. So you've got a really nice sharp point. The beauty of that is it fits in a fid beautifully. You take and match these up opposite, not like it'll work like this too, but if you just match them up opposite, it will go into this fid very, very easily. And then if you take another little piece of tape, so funny, I've shown so many people this little trick and people are like, oh my goodness, it changed my life. It certainly changed mine. So I tend to start on the fid and work my way back onto the am steel and get it very, very tight. Again, get a tight wrap. But once you've done that, just put this on one end. When I'm making a bunch of these, I'll put a fid on both ends, even though it's not really necessary. So to start the soft shackle, here's the process. I work with about 40 inches to 48 inches of am steel to make a soft shackle. I know that sounds like a lot. Actually, this is a longer piece, so I'm gonna give myself a shorter piece to work with here. So I'm going to tape the end of this again. But I found for 1/4 inch, 48 inches works really well for. So now we've got our piece cut, and as I was saying, 48 inches works really well for the 1/4 inch. Leaves you a little bit of waste at the end. 3/16. I tend to make those smaller so I can get by with a little shorter piece. This is actually kind of a long piece, but so what you do, you basically find the center of your piece here. Get in here where you can see it, and find the center. And basically, all you need to do is open up the braid a little bit. Open it up so you can get the fed to work it through the strands. You want to make sure you get equal number of strands on both sides. So since it's a 6-strand. Since it's a 12-strand line, you want 6 on either side. I was off by 1 there, I believe. Yeah, that looks right. Center of the line. So then just pull this up, pull this all the way through till you've got technically you want an eye that is the size of 2 pieces of the same strand material you've got. I tend to make these a little tight. I kind of tend to work with either a little scrap of am steel, tuck it in that eye so it doesn't get too tight, and then just cinch down on that. Cinch down so it kind of captures that piece. It's better that this eye is a little too small than too big. So now as you'll see, this tail end went through this part. So to make your slip eye, which is what this eye over here is, it's a slip eye so that your knot will open up more easily. It's just a slip eye like that. So you're going to figure out how big this slip eye needs to be. For 3/16, it's got to be big enough so that when you open this up, the eye is big enough to fit the knot through. If you make this slip section too short, this is not going to open up enough to get the knot through. So again, this is probably better if this is too big than too small. You'll kind of figure it out as you go. But I tend to make the slip eye about 2 inches long, 1.5 inches, something like that. But the key is this piece went through this, so now this piece has to go through this. You have to always remember to cross back over. So again, you open up the material there, and you take the opposite side. Now here's the other beauty of having an angle cut on this. Since I've only got the fid on the one end, I just open this up with another fid. I've actually got some other tools here. I've got a double-ended knitting needle that obviously I've put some torque on somewhere along the way. But if you just open up the braid, just work it open a little bit, you'll be able to stick this tapered piece right through there. Just kind of work it through. And that's the beauty of having a sharp knife. It gives you a nice clean angle cut. So now you've got your eye and you've got your slip section. Now you need to, Amsteel works on a locking principle. There's a lock called a Brummel lock, locking Brummel. We're going to use part of that. So right now this piece again is going through this piece here. So now to lock this, we want to make sure this piece goes through this. If you take this piece back through this very close, you'll see that you'd only have 2 or 3 strands of your material that would be taking a tremendous amount of load, and it's likely that those would break under load. So what you do is you make sure you cross over. So this piece went through this one, so now this piece has to go through this one, and you want it very close to this. So you can even mark these. It's not that critical, but if you mark, just take a look where this exits the other piece. So right where this piece exits, you open it up right there, and again, get your fid in here. Open up the braid. Try not, whatever you do, try not to split the braid itself, like, you know, go up through a section of braid. So, you know, there I'm off by 1, so I need to go over so that you've got equal number on both sides. Yep. So now this goes back through here. So now you've got, this locks. If you look at it, it locks against itself. And it's very, very strong. It's called a locking Brummel. So now, here's where you do the berry. Now technically you don't even have to do a berry. You could just go down here and tie a diamond knot. But the berry adds some strength and it adds some tidiness to it, so let's do it that way. You can actually do it without this locking. You can just do an over a loop and 2 things and or two standing parts and a diamond knot. It works just fine. But we're going to make the strong, improved soft shackle. So now again, this piece went through this one. So now we're going to bury this piece down through here. And to do that, I've got to switch the fid from one end to the other. So we'll take the tape off this. Take my tape off this one, and we will put the fid on the other side. This is why it's helpful to actually have 2 fids. Oh, if you plan it right, you can just do it with the buried ends, or the tapered ends. So let's get this taped in here. Okay, so now the berry is this. Now you've got, I made this a little short, so this is going to be a pretty small soft shackle. Again, this piece went through here, so now this piece needs to go bury into here. So you open this up, but you don't go all the way through. You open this up part way, and you're going to take this fid and you're going to go down inside of the hollow braid. You're going to go down inside of the core. This is where you can't use too big of a fid. I've got, the nice thing is it will open up that much. So you just push this, as you see it, push it here and it opens up and it'll slide over the fid. Now this, I need to leave myself enough tail here. This is why you've got to make sure you leave enough tail to be able to tie the knot. So then you just exit back out of here. You find a spot where you can open up the braid again and have the fid come right back out there. And then one of the things I've found is if you push on this and twist this a little bit, it works its way through there. So you've got that all the way out. So now the fid came off of there, so I'm going to show you a couple of tricks. One of the things with am steel is you want to make sure that you snug everything up really tight. So you take the piece that was buried and you pull it. So this section jams up really tight, and then get everything up here where you want it in terms of your eye size and your slip size. Then you grab it here and milk this back down. Do a lot of milking. We're dairy farmers here in the soft shackle business. So you milk this back down so it's very, very tight on here, because part of the beauty of am steel, part of the strength of it is the capture of one piece inside the other. It's like Chinese finger cuffs. You know, you put your fingers in there, and if you push them, you can get it in, but you pull hard and you can't get them out again. So there's the basics of your soft shackle. Now I like to do one more thing because I find it's easier in the end. So I like to bury this one more time, or lock this one more time. So the piece that came out, you want to bury the other part into the piece that was buried. So you open, so you can see this. So this was the piece that was buried. This is the piece that's going to go through the other. So again, right at the joint there, you open that up. And here again, this is a place where you don't necessarily need a fid on the other end, because what you're trying to do is you're just trying to get this pushed through there. So if you open this up, a little bit bigger fid, just open it up so that you can take this tapered end. Again, the beauty of this is that this tapered end acts as its own fid for the most part. So you stick it back through there. So you got one more locking brummel right here. So then you pull this up tight. Just make sure everything's worked out smoothly. So there's no big bulges, there's no loose ends anywhere. You'll get good at tying these. Here's one of the downsides of working with colored am steel. You'll have colored hands. So now let's take and tie the knot. So now again, here's our two standing parts, just like we had over here. Take this and turn it under again. And I keep this down very, very close to the exit where these come out. Take and make your loop here that doesn't go down through, it's got to come up through. So you got these two loops just like that. This one with the tail underneath the standing part, this one with the tail inside of the standing part, but this loop has to go up through the other loop. So there you've got that. So now you go over this standing part, under this tail, and from back to front through the other loop. And if you pull the slack out of this and pull the slack out of this, you will have the beginning of the carrick bend, the beginning of the diamond knot. So now I'm going to sneak this a little closer yet, because I left myself marginal tail. You'll see why you leave some tail. You just have to accept the fact you're gonna waste a foot of am steel every time you do one of these. But you know, am steel's not terribly expensive compared to some other lines. So now you've got this square hole through the middle again. This little square hole, so the camera can see it. There we go. So you take this, and this is why you want to leave enough tail, because this is pretty short. So you go around, not around the first standing part, you go around the second standing part and up through that hole. Right up through that hole. And the same thing with the other one. Not around the first standing part, but around the following standing part, which is this one right here. So they both come up and exit right out of that same space. Pull the slack out of that, and we're going to work some slack out. Get this nice and snug. See, there's a little bit of looseness here that I don't want, so I'm going to pull that through, work it out, work it on around, work it on around, and you'll find the slack gets bigger and bigger, like most knots, and then you take the slack out with that. Okay, now here, there's your diamond knot. Now, at this point in time, I like to pull this way, so pull apart this way, and I also like to pull the knot tight from here. So I get this pretty tight just working it by hand. Just pull on one end, and pull on the other end, and then grab the eye and pull here. And just kind of, so this is why one of the reasons I like to keep the knot close to this exit point, because it's going to work its way up away from it a little bit as you tighten. So you get this pretty tight, but you'll hear that this is not really, it's kind of, you tap it on something that's not really very hard. So here's one of the other tricks that I learned on the L36 website. He refers to a workbench he's got with a steel plate with a hole in it that he can do this tightening process with. Well, on my boat I don't have a workbench, I don't have a steel plate, so I came up with an alternative, and it's worked out really, really well. I got a piece of 1-inch starboard. This is king starboard. If you got a plastics place near you, you can make this. You can make it out of wood. I've tried to make these out of 3/4, and they're not quite big enough, so it needs to be about a 1-inch cross-section piece of something. It could be Delrin's wood. I think starboard works really well because it's smooth and it doesn't hang up on things. And you'll see I drill several holes through it. I drill a pretty large hole through the middle. That's like a 7/16 hole, and then a small hole at the end, a little bit bigger hole, and bigger hole. That's for different size soft shackles. So that what I've found works really, really well is if you take the eye end of your soft shackle and put it up through the center of this, and then you'll find your own place for doing this. I don't have a real good place right here, but I take and I can either, once this is through here, I can put this tail end through an open body cleat on the boat. I've used my feet, put this through and hold this down on the floor with your feet, and then you pull up on this other one. Now I'm on a table here, so I can't really do that, but essentially you're pulling these two pieces apart. So as you do that, you're going to find that this knot gets tight, moving away. Now I'm going to put this on the floor and do that same thing. Be careful of bending over and pulling hard. That's hard on backs. But so then you've got the knot tightened that way. So the other key to this is you take, and this is the reason for the various size holes, is put one of the tails up through here, and then get your trusty vice grips. Don't worry about destroying the end of this line because it's going to get cut off anyways. So what you want to do is get this really tight, and then clamp down on this. Got to adjust these a little bit. Clamp down really hard on it with the top of the vice grips against that you're using as a fulcrum, and then what you basically do is you just lever this like this, and if you look at it, you get a huge amount of leverage on that. So tighten that one down. Do the same thing with the other side. Again, you're not using the bottom of this. You're using the top of the vice grip, so you get a nice big fulcrum lever action. So you snug up on that one. Those are not quite tight enough. And again, don't worry about shredding this into the am steel because it all gets trimmed off. You tighten that back down again, and you will see that this knot is incredibly tight now. Now, I typically do this whole process twice. I'll put this through here again, and people have used winches, whatever. Anything you can capture this with, so you can pull on this. You can use your feet. Like I said, I put it through cleats on the boat. Got a place in the cabin that I've got a little eye that I can put this through. Let me tighten this down one more time. So I like to go through the process twice, so that it works this knot really, really, really tight. Because the whole key to the soft shackle is that this knot is not going to roll over on itself. I'll show you how you can tell if it's going to. So tighten this down again. Once you do this, you'll realize how much leverage you've got on that and how tight you can get a diamond knot doing this. It's basically what the gentleman on L36 does on his workbench, but this portable thing works well for me. So you tighten down on that. Okay, so now you've got a knot that sounds a whole lot like this. It should sound like a nut. It should sound like it's very, very hard. There's no hollowness in it. There's no, and you can feel this. It's just incredibly hard. So now, that is your soft shackle. Now, there's a couple of ways to deal with these ends. You can just, you can cut them off long. Don't cut them off too, you can actually cut them off short. A lot of the instructions say to cut it off out like this. I tend to like to cut them off very short, but I don't like to cut them off with a knife. What I use instead is a hot knife, which I've got a butane hot knife that cuts these off very, very well. I cut them at a little bit of an angle, like so you can see this, like a little bit of an angle like that, and then this one like that, so it comes out to a little bit of a point. You can kind of see that here, how this comes out to a little bit of a point. But these are burned off really, really close. So I'm going to try something that I haven't tried before. Since I don't have a hot knife, I'm going to go heat up a knife and we'll try it that way. So I'll be right back. Okay, so let's try this. This is a hot knife. So you just angle this in really close to the knot and let it melt its way through. This is very inadequate compared to using a regular hot knife, but you'll see that I'll finish this by cutting it off, but you'll see the difference between cutting it with the hot knife, which kind of leaves a nice smooth part or smooth end, versus the other, which is kind of fuzzy. So my apologies for not having my butane hot knife with me. I'm not on the boat right now and can't fly with that. So, but basically there is your soft shackle. And I think if we actually took the whole tutorial and added it in, probably didn't take much more than about 15 minutes. So I don't know what the timing is on this, but there you go. There's your soft shackle, and that's about how long it takes to make them. So again, go back and get understanding how to tie the diamond knot down. And once you've done that, then all the crossovers and such are not that difficult to figure out. Just to give you an idea, if you want to do a very, very simple soft shackle, let me just basically do one here. Find the middle of a piece of am steel and do a crossover. Again, open up the braid, pass the other end through. Oops, off center there. Pass the braid through here, and again, this is where you don't really even need the fitted. You just pass the cut in through. The very simplest soft shackle is exactly this. You got an eye, run this out to where you're going to do a knot. This would be a very long soft shackle. Tie your diamond knot. I'll tie one here without a lot of dialogue just so you can see how pretty basic it is. Okay, you've got your carrick bend. If you're going to tie what I call a simple soft shackle, you're going to need to make sure that these ends aren't, uneven like this. You have to have these both exactly the same length, or as close to exactly the same length as you can. So what you do is just hold this tight here, work the slack out of this until you get things squared away to a point where the knot's going to sit where you want it to sit. There we go. So you've got your little sombrero, and again you go around the next standing part and up through, around the next standing part and up through. Now this is the challenge here. Here's why you tape the ends. This is a piece I burned off to try to see if it would burn off well, and it's kind of hard to get up through there. It kind of hangs up on things. But tighten this knot up. I'm not going to, because I don't want to soft shackle that long. But basically, a soft shackle can be as simple as that. An eye and a diamond knot with no crossover, no berries, no nothing. As a matter of fact, I make these with small stock, like, with little stuff like 7/32, just for hanging fishing rods and things like that. Just hanging things up, because they don't have to be strong and they don't have to be bulky like a regular soft shackle is. But this soft shackle right there, I would have to check my numbers, but is probably around the 9,000 or 10,000 pound breaking strength. And one thing of note is when you are attaching soft shackles to things, you want to make sure you load these properly. So the conventional wisdom is, rather than load it like this, which puts number one, it doesn't lock this as tight as you might like. I have made it a habit of loading them like this, not as opposed to like this. I feel it puts a better load on things. I just made it a habit of doing that. I'm not sure how critical it is. Brian Toss and the gentleman on L36 might differ with me, but I think for all intents and purposes, the way these are used, it's not really going to matter. That's about the size I have holding our main halyard to the top of the sail, the head of the sail. I use one a little bit bigger than that to attach my general sheets to the clew of the sail. To do that, of course, you have to have eyes spliced in the one end of your general sheets. But it's really nice because you don't have bowlines that are hanging up on shrouds when you're trying to tack and things like that, because this passes around standing rigging very easily. So at any rate, there you have it. Hope that's helpful, and there we go.